Hey guys, it's Kevin here, my review for Monkey Man. In this film, we're focusing on this anonymous man that we really only know as Kid. He is this underground fighter of sorts, and he ends up taking this job in a kitchen, a way to continue to obtain money that he's gotten from the fights. But secretly, he is someone who has been through an insurmountable amount of pain and suffering. And after years of suppressing that rage within the kitchen, he ends up befriending this Meager. And that Meager may potentially give him the opportunity to finally give the retribution to this rich and powerful group that has destroyed him and other people's lives once and for all. Monkey Man, I was very excited for this film, not just because of the fact that, I really enjoyed the marketing. This seemed like the kind of just really original, but really sort of like riveting action film that I just usually really get excited for. Kind of like a John Wick or something like that. Very much seemed like it was going to be in the vein of that kind of movie. But also just getting to see Dev Patel and him, helming this film that's kind of been this passion project for him. I was really excited to see how this was going to turn out. This was originally going to be a Netflix original, but thank God for Jordan Peele, who came in and made sure that, no, this is theatrical release. This movie is good enough to put in theatrical, and thank God he did, because now we get to see it theatrically. This is not a movie that's going to go to Netflix that probably only a handful of people are going to watch and probably forget about within a few weeks, because that's how streaming movies tend to go. Although these days it's also how theatrical movies tend to go for the 40-day release and things like that, but that's a whole other different discussion. The point is, I was very excited for this film, and my God, this movie lived up to the hype in pretty much every way possible. Monkey Man is such a incredibly riveting, but also a really effective thriller. It really just ends up pushing the boundaries of the genre in an amazing way, but we are just getting into it right now, starting off with the cast here. And like I said, going into this, I think that's one of the biggest draws of this film, just again for our lead performance here in Dev Patel, who, he's someone that I have really loved as an actor for a while now, going all the way back to Life of Pi and things like that. I've always seen the potential in him as an actor. I really loved his work in The Green Knight in 2021. I still think that is his best performance to date. I really loved the work he did in that movie, and I was hoping that that film could really usher him to push himself even further, to continue to put himself in, projects that really end up utilizing him well as an actor, and this film absolutely does that. He is phenomenal as this character, specifically because of just how much mystery there is to the character of Kid. There's so much we are left in the dark with about him, and because of that, Patel really needs to be able to convey what he is feeling, what he has really been through as a character. There is a lot of, there is a lot of pain that this character has gone through. There is a lot of violence this character has gone through, and you really do feel that throughout this movie. And as Kid gets closer and closer to that vengeance, you really see that determination within him. You see how, how much he's willing to bring down this group and everything that's been taken from him. Patel just does such a great job of communicating that within this film, but also just making this character feel very likable and vulnerable. We really do feel ourselves drawn to Kid as a character, and I'll get into why a little bit later, but Patel, again, just brings so much humanity to this character in a way that I think no other actor really could. You can see how much passion he pours into this role, more so than he has in any other movie, and it's just really great that he was able to get to finally play the character that he's wanted to for years. This is a movie he's been wanting to do pretty much his whole life, and you really do feel that throughout this film. I think this is just going to really push Patel further to continue to take on challenging roles like this, and I really hope that is the case, because he absolutely has the capability to do that. So much of the film is reliant on his performance and his reaction, and really is the reason to see this movie, and he just really pushes himself to his limits in a way that we haven't seen him do before, and I was just really impressed by his performance in this film. The other performance here, I think, work really well. Sharlto Copley is really good here as this real and likable and kind of abusive host that ends up really just constantly taunting Kid. That's kind of the role that he's supposed to play. You can tell that he relishes in doing that, and he does a really great job at portraying that here. I really enjoyed his performance in this film. Pitobash is really fun as this character Alfonso, who Kid ends up interacting with. I thought he had some of the best moments in the movie, provides a lot of great comedic relief, and I really enjoyed what he ended up doing here. But Sikandar Kher as Rana is definitely one of the biggest standouts in this movie. I mean, he plays the kind of villain that you just absolutely hate and you want to see brought down, but also brings so much menace, but also this sense of charisma in him. You can tell why people have appointed him to the position that he's now been in, and, you know, he really does a great job of channeling that throughout this movie. Every time he's on screen, I mean, you are just so disgusted by what he's doing, but also you can see how convincing he is at making himself seem like this respectable, like, political leader and things like that. So he does a really good job at portraying that in the film. I really enjoyed his performance here. Really, everyone does a great job in this film, but I really also do want to point out Ashwini Kalsekar, who plays Queenie. Not in the movie a ton, but whenever she's here, I mean, she is the exact kind of character that you are just really intimidated by. She means business. You don't want to cross her in any way, and I just really enjoyed watching her character in this film. You know, she's playing this, like, manager of this brothel and things like that, and her reactions and things like that are just some of the most memorable moments within the movie, and I really enjoyed what we ended up getting from her in this film. I thought she gave a really strong performance. And Vipin Sharma, who plays this character Alpha, who kind of becomes this sort of mentor of sorts to Kid, I thought was really great here. Again, not an actor that I've seen in really anything before, but I really enjoyed his presence in this film. You know, he's not in the movie a ton, but when he is here, he is very effective at what he ends up doing. He has one of the most memorable scenes within the entire film with this training of sorts he gives to Kid, and I just really enjoyed watching him in this movie. So I think, again, really every actor is pushing themselves their fullest potential. There are some actors I've never really heard of, but I think everyone really did put effort in here, and I was really impressed by the entire ensemble within this movie. But now we really do have to get to the stuff that makes this film work as well as it does, and that is the directing and the writing here. The directing specifically from Dev Patel is just extraordinary in this movie. Like I said, this is like his directorial debut, and the fact that this is the film that he really does come out with, it just really shows how much of a force he is to be reckoned with directorially. I mean, I cannot wait to see what else he ends up doing after this film. I think he has such a future in terms of directing here, because everything he does here is just so precise. The movie has a very good style to it. I alluded to before that a lot of people thought it was going to be like John Wick, and it's really not. I feel like John Wick thrives in its simplicity. I would not call this movie simplistic. I think there's a lot more elements to it than something like a John Wick, and I think it actually succeeds as a result. There is a lot of stuff that Patel is trying to insert in this film. 1 second, the movie is, you know, every bit as much of this, like, badass action film that you're expecting it to be. The next second, it is a lot more of this political thriller of sorts, where we're diving into, you know, the politics of India and this corrupt sort of group that is now running the country and has, you know, driven away all of the poor and things like that, and the effect that that's had on everyone. So, you know, that's a big element of this film. Then there's even some comedy in this movie, and that actually does work really well. There's a lot of moments in this film that did have me laughing throughout. I think that was inserted very well. And then there's this other element to the film that's almost this character study of sorts, and everything feels really well balanced. It doesn't feel like one style is hurting the other. It feels like Patel does a good job of knowing when to incorporate all these things, and I think overall, you know, it's just a really well-rounded film director-wise, and I really enjoyed what he ended up doing to this film. I mean, you know, the passion is evident. I don't even think I really need to say, considering just how hard he's fought for this movie. You really do feel it throughout this film. And this is not one of those cases where it's like, this movie he's wanted to make forever and it doesn't feel that way. You really do feel like this is the kind of movie that he's been wanting to make from the beginning, and it just really ends up succeeding and such. It's always great to see a director have a passion for a film. It is even more exciting when that film delivers as much as it does, and that is very much the case when it comes to the directing here. I'm really just blown away by what he was able to do in this film, and I just really can't wait to see what the result is moving forward. What is his next movie going to be? What other projects he's going to tackle? I mean, I feel like we've only scratched the surface of what Dev Patel can do director-wise, and I really love what he was able to bring to the table here. So really great directing overall. When it comes to the screenplay in this movie, this is another element that I'm just really impressed by in this film, because when it comes to the character of Kid, I feel like he's a much different character than people are expecting him to be. Most of the time when we see a film like this, it is usually someone who is this, like, highly regarded, hitman of sorts, who has, dabbled in all these different jobs and has performed some very difficult tasks before, and maybe he's, like, retired or he's out of the system, and now there's a tragedy that ends up happening that, like, pulls him back into it. That is not at all the story we're dealing with when it comes to this character. Instead, we're dealing with this character that has gone through a ton of loss within his life, and he's really kind of had to repress it. He hasn't really been able to fully confront it, and it's because he is not this well-known fighter. If anything, he's kind of a laughing stock of sorts. He's in this job as a fight club, yes, but he's doing it as a means to to earn money, and by doing that, he also is paid to lose, essentially. And because of that, he doesn't really have those skills within him. He wants to, but he doesn't think that he can accomplish it. He doesn't think that he is able to perfect that. And you can see him kind of, a lot of this film, at least for the first 30-40 minutes, is watching him go through his day-to-day life and just seeing how much he is struggling to find work, how much he is struggling to, take up all these different jobs and things like that. And, you can see he obviously wants to exact revenge, but he doesn't really know if he is capable of doing it. And I really like that arc for this character, because as the movie goes on, he starts to become far more confident within himself. And, the more he ends up starting to recognize that this might actually be a possibility this time around, the more he really starts to, gain this confidence and gain this drive within himself. And so you really do find yourself rooting for Kid as a result. You want him to push himself to his limits. You want him to get to that point where he's able to exact revenge, but you also understand, what he's really going up against. What is his real mission here? The movie does a really good job of fleshing all that out, but also really taking its time. We actually don't know what Kid has gone through for a very long time in this film. It takes about literally an hour and 20-ish minutes to really flesh out his backstory and understand, what this character has gone through. And as we start to dive deeper into it, we start to care that much more. We want him to do whatever he can to get out of this situation. I think the movie just did a really great job with it. I thought it was a really wise choice to find a way to get this film to stick out from others of its kind. Because like I said, it seems like a story on paper that we've seen before, but it really isn't when you look at what this is actually all about and the story that he's trying to tell. He's not telling a story about someone who is experienced. He's telling a story about someone who actually hasn't had that experience and hasn't been able to accomplish what he wants to, and now might finally have that opportunity. And I think that's why this film sticks out as much as it does in terms of the story. I really like the character of Kid and the journey he ends up going down. I think that is just really well done in this film. I've seen some reviews talk about what this character has been through within his past, but because the movie takes so long to really get into it, I'm kind of just gonna hold off on that here and say that I thought they did a really good job at slowly giving you little ideas and glimpses of what this character has been through, but not really diving headfirst into it until a certain point. And once they did, it made the film that much more exciting, and it made my it made sort of the investment in Kid as a character that much more compelling. You really feel that much more sympathetic towards him. You understand what this character has been through and why he is so fixated on exacting revenge. You really do start to understand the full magnitude of what he's been through, as the film goes on. And I really was impressed by that. I think if the movie would have just told you up front what he had gone through, I don't think it would have been as effective. I think the fact that they wait a bit to really kind of settle you into it, I think made it that work that much more. And I really did appreciate the way the story was told in this film. But the other thing that really ends up sticking out about this film, aside from the character of Kid, is the culture infused within it. You can tell that Patel has made a concerted effort to really dive headfirst into Indian culture. I mean, when it comes to Monkey Man alone, there's a whole mythology associated with that, and the film really does a great job of diving deep into all that. And this is not just credit to Patel, it's also credit to Paul Angunawela and John Collee, who are the co-writers of this film. I mean, they do a really good job of just diving headfirst into that, and you really do feel that influence throughout this movie. Even when it comes to scenes that aren't focusing on that culture, I mean, that influence is all over this film, and I think that's something else that just works out really well here in terms of the writing in this film. And also, there's a political element to this movie as well, and how this is affecting India as a nation. That's something else the movie really wants to dive deep into, and I think that's something else that the movie does a really good job with, is understanding what this revenge means, not just for Kid, but for all these other underprivileged and underpaid, residents of India. There's a lot of, there's a lot of characters here who their lives have kind of been stripped away because of the government, because of the politics and things like that. And we really dive into, what this is going to mean. What is this revenge going to mean for all these other characters? And that's something else I really just appreciate within this film. So the movie does a really good job, I think, of diving into all these different elements, but never having it feel too convoluted. It all feels like it really just kind of fits together, and that was something I was really impressed by in this film. Or when it comes to the fighting element of this movie, what this means for Kid, and him kind of being this laughing stock of sorts, and him trying to gain the respect of other people. I think that's something else the movie does a really good job with. So there's all these different elements that the movie is trying to dive into, and for the most part, like I said, it all feels well fleshed out. It never feels like the movie, one is compromising the other. It never feels like there's too much going on here. They do a good job of really fleshing out all these different elements, and I was really impressed by the screenplay here. The cinematography also in this film is fantastic, whether it comes to just how visceral everything is put together. I think they do a really good job when it comes to that. There's so many fun locations here, particularly one group of people that Kid comes across. I'm sure you've heard about it in multiple reviews, but there is this group of trans people that Kid comes across, and just the way everything looked throughout that movie, the different sequences we got there were just really exciting to watch. There's one sequence in particular involving this very unique take on a training montage, and it was one of my favorite parts of the entire film. I thought it was so cool the way they ended up putting that sequence together. But when it comes to the look of everything just looks really great, and I really love the way the cinematography was done. But when it comes to the action in this film, I mean, that is an area that does not miss a beat in this film whatsoever. All of the choreography is so incredibly well done here. It's so kinetic and really just has you riveted from start to finish. There's so many sequences here that just had me absolutely gripping my seats, just in awe of what was going on. There's this kitchen fight in particular I thought was just really well handled. There's an elevator fight as well that is just really well done. I mean, the movie really just goes all out when it comes to its action sequences. Really don't disappoint at all in that regard, and I was really impressed by the way everything was handled there. I thought there's a lot of really great action scenes. There is, yes, an over-reliance on shaky cam. I've seen some people complain about that, but when so many of the action scenes are as riveting and, are as gripping and invigorating as these are, I really can't complain all that much, honestly. So that's not really something that took me out of the movie. Like, I've seen this movie twice now, and neither time was that something that I noticed. Like, I've heard people state that complaint, and it's just not something that really bothered me all that much. So I understand why that might be an issue for some people, but I just never really had that same issue. So I can't really say that's something that really bothered me all that much. Yes, I think it's a stylistic choice like anything, and I don't think they overused it in this movie. I think they used it when they needed to, and I didn't really have too much of an issue with that. The score here by Jed Kurzel is also really well done. It feels like it fits well in with that Indian theme that I talked about. I thought they did a good job with that, but also I think it just heightened the tension when it needed to. It came in at exactly the right time, and I really enjoyed the score throughout this movie. And the editing. The movie's 2 hours long, and I think it honestly is pretty well paced. I never really found myself checking out or bored of what was going on. I really found myself just into this film the entire time. I thought they did a good job of pacing everything out. That being said, this movie is not perfect. There are a couple things that do bring it down here, and that really does come down to the fact that there are a lot of characters in this movie that we are dealing with, and some of them I just felt like they need a little bit more time to properly flesh them out. The character of Alfonso in particular is a lot of fun at first. I really enjoyed him. I like the dynamic he has with with Kid and things like that. I really enjoy their back and forth in the movie. He has some really funny moments, but there's a point where he kind of goes away, and we don't really see him again, and I wish they would have come back to him in the film, because I feel like he was a really fun character, and they don't really do a lot with him. The same goes for the community of trans people that I talked about. I just felt like that group wasn't quite as well fleshed out as I wanted them to be. We get some really good moments between him and this character Alpha, but the other characters we come across there, I just wanted to see more of. I wanted to see more of, you know, the connection that they form with Kid, because like I said, throughout a lot of this movie, he isn't taken all that seriously, and this is really like the first group of people that really gets him to kind of, you know, instills more confidence in him, and I wish we got to see more of that throughout the film. That was something that I think they could have done just a little bit more with overall. And also, when it comes to the political side of this movie, I talked about before how I do think they did a good job of incorporating it, but it felt more like an afterthought than anything. I don't think the movie dived as deep into it as it needed to. Whenever they came back to it, I was like, okay, we're getting a little bit more of an idea, but I don't feel like we got enough of an idea of what was really happening. It's in the background. You can see how it's affecting all these different characters, you know, the corrupt government and things like that, and the shady organization that all these people are in, but I just wanted to see a little bit more of an idea of what we're really dealing with here. What, you know, what is really caused all of this? What is the goal? What are they trying to do? You know, it feels like we didn't get enough of an explanation with that, and I wish the movie would have done a better job with that overall. That being said, when we get to the third act of this movie and we see this character exact his revenge, I mean, it is every bit as rewarding as you are hoping it would be. I think just the way everything plays out in the climax of this movie, it's very exciting. There's a lot of things that come together really well, even more so than I thought it was going to be, and I think it really delivers when it comes to the payoff with a final shot that I have not been able to stop thinking about since seeing this movie. So even though there are some things that I wish they could have dived deeper into, I mean, it really did all come together towards the end of the film, so it really isn't that much of a complaint. It's just something I wish they would have spent just a little bit more time on than they ultimately did. But at the end of the day, Monkey Man is just an absolute blast. You have a director in Dev Patel, who both acting and directing wise gives such a strong sense of passion and excitement to this film that I think otherwise just simply wouldn't be there. There's this great passion for Indian culture the film dives deeper into. There's this really great subversion on a revenge mission, but it is so much more than that. It is much more of a personal story for Kid and kind of seeing what he has to overcome. The movie does a good job of kind of just throwing you in and slowly piecing things together and giving you more of an idea of what's really at stake and what this mission is really all about, and I thought that the film did a really great job with that. There's some great action sequences. There's some really interesting social commentary here. Overall, this movie was, for the most part, what I really wanted to be. There are some things I wish they touched upon here and there, but I think just the passion and the overall style that Patel brings to the table, it just really has me eager to see what he is going to do moving forward. I think there's so much more of a career he has within him directing wise, and I can't wait to see how that really does pan out. But also just in general, you know, it's just really great to see a original action film be as entertaining but also be as effective as this one really was. I think that, you know, we get so many blockbusters these days that kind of feel recycled and very kind of just like on the same level. This one really does feel like it's trying to do something different, and it mostly does accomplish that. And I think that is definitely something that is worth commending. I'm so happy that this film did come to theaters, because I think experiencing it with a crowd in a theater, it just adds a whole other aspect to it that just really can't be replicated in any way at all. Again, this is just another film that I just really can't recommend enough. It sucks that it did underperform in theaters, but I really do hope this is a film that has like a second life, whether that be VOD, whether it be, you know, over the years. I could see this being like a cult film and things like that. I think that Patel, especially as a director, I just really can't wait to see where he is going to go moving forward. And if you want a movie that is both this really exciting, high-octane action film, but also is this really personal sort of character journey of sorts, and seeing this character, you know, push himself to his limits, but also seeing a director push himself to his limits in a way he hasn't been able to before, I really think that Monkey Man is going to satisfy you in that way. It certainly did for me. I had a really great time with this one, and I am going to give Monkey Man overall an A-. But over, guys, to my review of Monkey Man. Let me know what you guys saw this movie. I'll lift your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.